Welcome to the Unbearables podcast. I'm Brandon Ruiz, and I'm here with
Zeke, Cappel,
and Emilio.
And today we're going to be talking about the NBA awards. Now, first things first, we want to get this out of the way. We want to talk about the MVP because there was a lot of debate, especially between the one who won and the one who was the runner-up. And I mean, I hope you guys know, if you don't, the winner was James Harden. And the runner-up was LeBron James.
Yeah, maybe we should put a spoilers warning.
Yeah, spoiler.
A spoiler
James
alert.
Harden won.
I'm sorry. Well, I spoiled it, but
but that's what we do. We
Yeah.
talk about sports here.
So
Sorry about that.
So yeah, but at the end of the day, it comes down to, I feel like, for me personally, win shares. Not in every single debate. I'm just saying in this, it seems like to me for with their decision, the people who are voting, I think it was win shares, because if you look at it from this perspective, James Harden played 72 games. LeBron actually played 82 games, which is actually very impressive because it was the first time LeBron has ever done this in his career. But LeBron had 14 win shares, which is actually that's a really good amount of win shares for a season. But with 10 less games, James Harden had 15.4 win shares. And so I feel like that really says something about James Harden's game this season. I do think that LeBron is the better player overall, obviously. But at the same time, it's like I feel like this is where their argument came from, because that stood out to me when I was looking over the statistics, and maybe that stood out to them.
Right. And I mean, even if you just look at obviously James Harden is built, and his game is built around being the more prominent scorer, especially just the way the Rockets team has it set up, which is why, people were so concerned with Chris Paul coming in last season to start off with, but they worked out, and he averaged, I think, 30.4, and then I think James averaged 27.5. So, I mean, that speaks for itself. To put in perspective, KD averaged 26.4. So, yeah, I mean, I feel like it was just in the bag for Harden this season. He had that 60-point triple-double. I was just like, man, that's hustle.
Yeah, I thought it was well deserved. The argument that a lot of people try to make that LeBron deserved the award was that it was just voter fatigue, and they didn't give it to him just because they felt like, oh, well, he won it so many times, they didn't want to give it to him. And I don't really think that's true. If you look at Michael Jordan, the only person who won an MVP in his prime during that time was Charles Barkley. And the only reason why he won is because he had more win shares than him. I believe he led his team to 62 wins, and Jordan led his team to 57 wins. And a lot of people look back and go, oh, well, Charles Barkley didn't deserve that award. Well, that's just not true, because he just accomplished more in the regular season. And that's just what James Harden did. We know that LeBron James is the better player in the league right now. It was just that James Harden was able to do more and accomplish more this season than LeBron James.
Right,
Oh, it's okay. Well, I do think that, for me personally, I do think it was for James Harden this year. If I were to pick someone, I would have picked James Harden. But just to go off of there are two arguments in favor of LeBron that I want to talk about. The one being that without LeBron on that team, everyone's saying that they would definitely be a lottery team. And without James Harden, they were still winning a lot of games, the Rockets. And so I can see where people are coming from, because especially Jack would say this if he was here. He would say well, with LeBron is the more valuable player to his team, which
right.
I believe is definitely true. I mean, if you just look at how they played in the regular season without him, those 10 games when he was gone, they were still playing very well. And the other argument, when you look at it, is that people were just looking at totals.
Mm-hmm.
And so LeBron had basically more points, more rebounds, and more assists. He had more of basically everything in every single category. But he did play more games, 10 more games. So that does kind of pad his lead a little bit. But if you also want to look at it this way, LeBron scored, just for points, LeBron scored in total 2,251 points, and James Harden scored 2,191 points. That's not really that far off from each other,
especially
considering
for 10 games.
Yeah, for 10 games. So, the rebounds definitely a really big difference there. A 300 amount difference, but the assists, they are a little bit closer. But just looking at that, I feel like that does say a lot to James Harden's game because, I mean, the main focus of his game is to score. Now,
Right.
LeBron's focus of his game is to basically do everything. So, I mean, which is incredible because he does it pretty well almost every single season. Well, actually, every single season, not almost every single season. He does it every single season. But James Harden did exactly what he needed to do. And if you're looking in just in totals of, I'm going to go back to win shares, he did it more effectively than LeBron did it, and LeBron's job is to do every single thing.
Yeah. The other side, I think, of the LeBron should have won it argument is a lot of people just think straight up the best player should just straight up get it. He was the best player, so that makes him the most most valuable. So I don't know. I personally, I think it should be. I like the way they like. The last few years, at least, they've been going off of just who had the better, like who was most valuable in the context of this season and like of what this season held and in context of their team, which I'm really glad that that's a part of that argument. But yeah, I think it was a clear. I agree with everything Brandon's saying, and I think it was a clear victory.
One thing I just wanted to point out that I thought was actually very interesting out of the three candidates, because there was Anthony Davis in there as well,
Right.
is that if you look at their offensive win shares, I believe defensive win shares, Anthony Davis is a whole point above LeBron and James Harden. I mean, James Harden, I feel like it isn't like you would assume. But if you do that, though, another interesting thing is that James Harden actually had more defensive win shares than LeBron.
That actually doesn't even surprise me, though.
I feel like it would surprise most people, though, because a lot of people would say that, like, because everyone always talks about LeBron's defensive versatility, which is definitely there, but so they would expect, I feel like, LeBron to have a higher defensive win shares than James Harden, and especially because the narrative with James Harden is that he slacks off on defense,
Right.
and so I mean that surprised me when I was looking at the numbers.
See,
I feel
it doesn't. The reason why it didn't surprise me is because the narrative this season and very much in some of the series in the playoffs was LeBron James wasn't playing that much defense. I mean, there was a lot of people, especially on FS1, just cooking him alive on it.
Yeah,
And,
he would take so many plays off too. He'd just stand on the other side of the court.
Right, exactly. And I guess just off of like before the season would have happened, I would have completely understood why somebody wouldn't think that. But after now with it behind us, I mean, it just made perfect sense to me. Like that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, and look, if you still think that the best player in the league should always get the MVP, that would mean that in 2016 when Steph won, in every single first place vote he got, that it really should have gone to LeBron, and that just says something.
Right.
That's interesting. Now, going into the next category, we wanted to talk about like most improved player, but it was the one case. I guess like spoiler alert if you want me to say this beforehand, but like Victor Oladipo was the winner.
Whoa, are you serious?
Yeah, and I
Wow.
mean, I feel like even if you didn't,
Make sure you put spoilers, man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
put spoilers in.
Spoiler alert.
I guess like if you looked at Victor Oladipo and you looked at Clint Capella and Spencer Dinwiddie, I feel like the decision is obvious because Victor Oladipo just had the most growth out of every single one of those players, and it wasn't even close. I mean, he basically gained almost 8, but it was like 7 points per game to his like points per game total,
Wow.
and that's ridiculous. And he also played more games this season than he did in the season prior. And I know he had a bigger role in on this new team,
Absolutely.
but I mean, he deserved it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you look at the narrative too. Like he was right next to Russell Westbrook, and when he came into OKC, everyone thought he like underperformed. You know, everyone was like, "Oh, well, like this isn't what they expected. They expected more." But as soon as he goes to Indiana, no one expected this guy to be any more good than he was with OKC, and he completely outperformed. So the narrative was completely in his favor by far.
Absolutely, and I think on and off the stat sheet, I mean, you just watch him play. He refined he improved and refined his game in so many ways. Whether it was his handles, his vision, his defensive abilities, his defensive hustle. Like he gave LeBron hell in that series, and that's the truth.
He did.
And it was really impressive to see because he wasn't afraid. And I think maybe part of that was, spending that time at OKC. I know he spoke a lot about how much Russell Westbrook was an impact in his life and how it gave him that, like never give up mentality. And I think if you're gonna get it from anyone, it's gonna be Russell Westbrook. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I just feel like, with that being said too, I mean, I know in that offseason, before he got traded, he
Right.
worked really hard to become a better player because he wanted to really help himself, but also help Russ out, because a lot of arguments against him and a lot of criticisms that he faced were always that, like, he didn't do enough to help Russ out,
Right,
which
exactly.
I mean, those are still happening with the players on Russ's team currently. But he worked so hard in this offseason, and it showed. Even not even just offensively. Like, if you look at defensively, he literally doubled his steals per game too. Like, he did every aspect of his game improved. There was not, I feel like, a single aspect that got worse except for turnovers, but that's because he was used more. His usage rating, his usage percentage went up so much too, and it's like,
Right.
everything you wanted from him that maybe could have ended up helping Russ out this season if he was still there. It's all there, and he's doing it for the Pacers.
Yeah, his offseason was actually crazy. I remember seeing a picture. I don't remember if it was 4 or 6 weeks ago, but it was a 4 or 6 week transformation where at first he barely had like half a six pack, and at the end he was just ripped, and it was ridiculous.
His transformation is insane, but one thing I was thinking about, like, with someone else's transformation from this season to last season. Now, I am a fan of, like, Spencer Dinwiddie just because of how he came up out of nowhere, and he was in the Bulls. I remember seeing him in the Bulls G League and all this stuff, and then the Nets picked him up, and he played well at the end of the season for them, and then they decided to re-sign him for the next season. But if you really look at his numbers, for him to be in this category, it really surprises me, because last season he didn't play the full season, but he did play like 59 games, and he had a 44.4% field goal percentage last season. This season he had a 38.6 field goal percentage, and to me it seems like, how did he go? That's a very important part of the game, taking bad shots or missing shots and all those things, and but he's in this most improved player award running. Like, I feel like there could have been definitely someone else who could have at least been there, or at least considered above him, just with that aspect, because everyone's looking at percentages nowadays, and how do you not notice that?
Right, and that's even an argument that was used a lot against Russell Westbrook. Like, that's the thing that you'll get crucified for now in this day and age with the way people have been raised now. Like, back in the 90s, back in the 80s, at least from what I've heard, I wasn't there. A lot of people, they just cared about what they saw. They just watched the game and they were impressed by it, and it didn't matter how many shots it took them to get to 40 points.
As long as they got to 40 points.
But that's not the case nowadays. And at the end of the day, popularity and the way you respond, the media and the spectators are going to respond. It's going to be a huge part of where you're going to end up in those rankings.
Now, one thing I will say about all that, though, about his percentages, is that I could understand why they were so bad, too, because if you look at that team, it seems like him and D'Angelo Russell are the only ones that really can score on that team.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you put that into perspective, when the other team knows that you guys are the only options, it might make all of your looks way harder. So I understand, but I still feel like it shouldn't have been 38.6%. That's
Right.
extremely low.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
he definitely improved. I mean, everyone knows that. We just feel like he probably shouldn't have been a top 3 candidate. I also feel
Right.
like the only reason why he was is because the only real super improved players were Clint and Victor, and they couldn't find anyone else who really improved that much this season.
How much do you think Clint improved this season?
I didn't even know who he was last season, so that just says
Yeah,
something.
That does say something.
Right, absolutely. I did, but I think the thing is, though, the timing of how their improvement and where they were before and after this improvement happened, I think has a lot to do with this. Although I still think Oladipo experienced a bigger growth than he did anyways, but Oladipo grew into a place now in which he's gonna be a star. He is a star now, and people are gonna be talking about him. And you put him in the right situations, he could contest for a championship. He's a guy that you could really use.
Well, anyone who, like you said earlier, anyone that can give LeBron James problems is definitely a star in this NBA.
Right.
Because to do that, it takes a ridiculous amount of skill. And to be honest, if Oladipo didn't get into early foul trouble, I think it was in I forgot exactly.
It was
what
like the 6th or 7th game.
I think so. They might have won the series over the Cavs.
It was very close. I think it shows how great the Pacers are actually going to be and how they turned around their franchise after getting rid of Paul George, because everyone predicted that they were going to be like towards the bottom of the seedings in the East, but they actually made the playoffs and took LeBron James in the first round to 7 games, and that's I thought that was ridiculous. It took them. That was the same amount of games it took the Celtics too. I mean, the Pacers are really on the come up. I feel like next year they're going to be like the 4th seed, honestly.
And although throughout the entire season, though, whatever is said or whatever people are saying, the reality is LeBron James, in hindsight, is always going to be looked at as the favorite because he's the best player in the world. But while the series was happening, that wasn't the case, especially after Game 3 and 4. A lot of people were thinking that
they were going to win.
Right, they could win this.
Well, they counted LeBron out. Like everyone, almost every single person was like, well, I guess that's it. LeBron's losing. There's nothing he can really do about it.
Yeah.
And it's kind of crazy that this Victor Oladipo-led team was a team that almost knocked him out. That really doesn't make sense. Like, if you would have said that a year ago, everyone would have looked at you crazy. And I think that really, really, like, just shows exactly how much of an improvement he made this season. Is that if you would have told anybody about how that season went down, no one would have believed you. But now, it seems very believable.
Yeah, I remember last year when the Bulls traded Jimmy Butler away and then the Pacers traded Paul George away, because they're very similar players. They're interchangeable on who you think is better. I was like, I wonder what team got the best trade, and at the time I thought the Bulls did, but I was clearly wrong since, Victor Oladipo actually came a star.
Well, I don't really know about that one, to be honest with you, because we don't know how Lauri Markkanen's going to turn out in that Bulls
That's
trade.
true. I think right now I would say the Pacers got the best, but in the future you never know.
Right, it was a move to set the Bulls up for in the long run, though.
Right,
so
right.
that time will tell with that, because that's what they were going. They didn't make that move in a win now mindset. You feel me?
Also, I think if you look at the players too, we just got Levine for it, and we don't know how he's gonna be. I don't really think he's gonna be spectacular. So
we did get Chris Dunn too, but
and he was great. He actually improved a lot.
He did. Now with Levine, it's crazy because I actually heard today on the radio, and I think it was John Paxson, and he was saying like, he's going to let Levine, they love Levine, but he's going to let him test the waters in free agency. So that's kind of interesting to talk about your point too, because like they did make this trade, and the guy they traded for, one of the main pieces of the trade, I mean there's only 3 of them, might walk. So that's pretty interesting in that. So I could see where you're coming from, but where a lot of people are having a lot of arguments in this awards and everything, this year's awards, is Rookie of the Year. Because now there were 3 rookies that played very well this season. And if the playoffs was...
There was actually, I would say, 5 or 6 that played really well, but 3 only make it, yeah.
Well, I feel like, though, the top 3 are definitely the ones that are deserving to be in the discussion.
Most definitely.
And I just feel like if the playoffs was involved in this, I don't even know where it would go.
If the playoffs were involved, I feel like Donovan Mitchell deserved that award.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes, because
I think so.
The hype that the Thunder had at the very beginning of the season, when they got Carmelo and Paul George, was that they were going to beat the Warriors. That was the narrative. That was like, this was the team that was going to beat them. And although at the end of the season, they weren't like that, everyone thought they were still going to beat the Jazz. They were like... Mm-hmm. And the Jazz are a very good team, but everyone thought on paper that the Thunder were a better team. Yeah, exactly. And the fact that he led in scoring that whole series against the reigning MVP, Russell Westbrook, and beat him in 6 games was ridiculous.
Well, I was going to say, it's interesting that Rookie was the man on that team.
Oh, yeah.
And he led them as far as he led them. Like, that just, it blows my mind. Because, yeah, I mean, for me... Donovan Mitchell is my favorite rookie of this draft class so far.
Me as well, actually. Great guy.
Yeah, he's my favorite too. But if you're just looking at regular season, I thought it was well deserved. I definitely said Ben Simmons for regular season.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy because, like, yes, that is definitely true. I do feel the same way because it is just regular season. I mean, Ben Simmons was the best on almost every single like statistical category. It's not even close. Like, not even not field goal percentage, assists, rebounds, steals, blocks, and it's just everything Ben Simmons seemed to do better than everybody else at. But what I'm saying is about, like, if you count the playoffs, if it's not
It's
like
no
this,
question if you count the playoffs.
because Ben Simmons did have that game where he scored 2 points,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why I like Donovan Mitchell.
Well, it was 1 point for Ben Simmons and 2 for Donovan, because Donovan had a game where he scored 2 points and Ben Simmons had a game where he scored 1 point.
Wait, I did not remember Donovan Mitchell scoring 2
I could look it up
points.
for you right now.
Well, I guess you can. But anyways, I'm just wanted to say, like, this is why I feel like Donovan Mitchell in this NBA, like right now, is better for a team because he can score from so many other places. And Ben Simmons does give you a lot because he's a playmaker. I mean, when people are open, he gets them the ball.
Right.
He creates plays for them. And that's very important. That's something that Donovan Mitchell does not do as well. But when you need someone to score, when you need someone to give you those points, those players, in my opinion, are usually a little bit more valuable, especially in the playoffs, because you're going to need someone to step up and be the man. And if you can only score from one area, the best teams in the league will expose you.
Absolutely. And maybe they won in the regular season because, like, there's not like your title's not on the line right now,
Mhm.
but the playoffs, it's a different animal. It's a different beast, and everyone's competing at a different level. And to be a good scorer, especially in the postseason, you have to have versatility. So I'm with you there. I really like Donovan Mitchell. I really like Ben Simmons, but I have a question for you, Brandon. Obviously, this has nothing to do really whether or not they deserved the Rookie of the Year award, right? Like this year. But if you were to place a bet, who do you think would end up being the best player? I know it's hard to tell. It's only 1 year, but what are you feeling?
That's interesting, right? Because it is a hard thing to gauge because you don't know how much they're going to grow. Because if Ben Simmons gains a shot, then it's over for Donovan Mitchell. He is not going to be the better player because Ben Simmons just has the vision, he has the rebounds, he has the defense, he has so many things that he has at his stage in his career. They are so highly developed that it's astonishing, really.
And he sat out a year, like
that. Yeah, and that's. I mean, I also think that did help him in a
Right,
sense because he got to
right,
see
yeah.
the NBA a little bit more. But for a team, I feel like I would probably like Ben Simmons more if I had it's situational. If I had a premier scorer on the team or someone I could count on besides him, because Ben Simmons really going to flourish if he has that with him. Now, if he has that scorer. Now, if I'm on a team where Donovan Mitchell when someone has to be the man specifically, I feel like Donovan Mitchell would probably be the best player in that situation.
Right, and I think that's why they did so well in the teams they landed, is because Ben Simmons had Joel Embiid, and then
He also had
Donovan
J.J. Redick, too, and all those
Right,
other
J.J.
shooters and
Redick.
everything.
yeah, and Donovan Mitchell had some good defensive pieces, and Ricky Rubio, he puts up some numbers too, and that was a good dynamic for them. So yeah, I'm really excited to see where they go. I think Ben Simmons kind of out of all of the challenges, I think developing your shot is going to be the kind of the bigger hill to climb. But he's just he just has so much else over him already.
Well,
you
his
know?
vision.
Right.
His vision
he just
is
has so much
great.
All right.
over him already.
Well, okay, so I haven't talked to him out because I was researching it. I believe it was Game 2 of the Rockets where he scored 2 points.
He scored
in the
2
series.
points.
Yeah,
Okay.
it wasn't the Thunder series. So
Okay.
Yeah, so it doesn't really matter that much, I guess.
I mean, it still matters.
Yeah,
It was a playoff series.
right.
So, like, it's a good thing to know the facts and everything, but I guess they are rookies and they both still did perform poorly and both of their stages. I just feel like overall, though, Donovan Mitchell gave a lot more to his team in the playoffs than Ben Simmons gave to his team.
Oh, definitely. And I feel like the team, like when they versus the Celtics really exposed how Ben Simmons can't spread the floor. You saw how they were guarding him. They made him like pass the ball every time, and he could not make shots at all. They forced him not even to make a single field goal. Well, not a single field goal, but like attempt a single field goal. I mean.
Now, I have a question though for you guys. Do you think? I mean, because I am a Chicago Bulls fan. Do you think that Lauri Markkanen can become better than Ben Simmons, Donovan Mitchell, or Jason Tatum?
All right. Well, as a Chicago fan, also huge Bulls fan, one of the greatest fans of all time. I love this sport. I love the Bulls. I'm not saying anything bad about Markkanen. I love Markkanen. I don't feel like he will ever be better than Ben Simmons.
Ever?
Just for the fact that Ben Simmons, I feel like, and I'm on the train for this too. Like I'm on the whole ride for this. That I feel like Ben Simmons will be a top 1 or 2 player in the league when LeBron's gone. Like
Okay.
he will when he gets older and he develops more and he develops a shot. I really feel like he'll be like that. So I don't feel like
he develops a
Markkanen.
shot.
Yeah, that's right. So that's what I'm saying. If I don't really feel like Markkanen stands a chance because even though I feel like Markkanen could be an all-star one day, I don't really feel like, or even better, I don't really feel like he would ever be able to compete with Ben Simmons.
I actually feel a little differently. I feel like Lauri Markkanen has so much potential because of his size, his shot. He has a lot of things that if he did get stronger, if he does get a little bit stronger, which he did, he could be a real problem for just about anybody in the league.
He looked like he could shoot anywhere too.
That's the thing. Lauri Markkanen has so many tools. He has the shot already.
Right.
I would say
absolutely.
that he looked like both Porzingis and Dirk.
And that would be really cool if it actually turns out that
Yeah.
way. I want him to be like Dirk, obviously, because that would be awesome for the Bulls. But I feel like he has that potential to be amongst these top 3. I don't think that's a stretch by any means.
I feel like he could be better than the other two, but I don't feel like
Right.
Yeah.
That's where I'm coming from. I'm not too sure because obviously as a Bulls fan, I'm going to be biased and I'm just going to be hoping like I want him to be way better than Ben Simmons ever will be. But like I'm not too sure about Ben Simmons. I do think there is an opportunity considering that he can pull up anywhere on the court, and that's going to be a really, really important tool to have, especially when he's having big moments. If he gets the Bulls to maybe the Eastern Conference or whatever it is. But but it definitely for Donovan Mitchell, Jason Tatum, I think he could definitely pass them off.
Oh yeah, I feel like. Well, Jason Tatum could obviously also be an MVP one day. I don't really think he will. I think he'll be like Paul George. He'll be a really good player that every single person wants on their team, but he's not like he's not like the greatest player on a championship team.
What I found interesting though about Jason Tatum this season, and I was a really big fan of him ever since the draft. I thought he was going to be a really good player, and I found interesting his 3-point shot. Now, his 3-point shot is incredible, especially for his rookie season. He shot 43.4% from the 3. And this one player that's really, really good at threes, maybe the best all time. This season, Steph Curry shot 42.3% from the 3. I'm not saying that Jason Tatum is a better 3-point shooter than Steph Curry. But that is saying something.
It is.
That is definitely saying something about your game.
The only thing I'd say to Steph is that he takes like 10 a game, so that's why it's so low.
I mean, that's still. I mean, if you're taking 10 a game, I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, like.
No, okay, so Ray Allen always kind of had a higher 3-point percentage than Steph, but in games where he shot more, his field goal percentage for 3-point field goal percentage went down, and that's exactly what happens with Curry.
I mean, yeah, that does. I see what you're saying, but I feel like though that doesn't take away from Jason Tatum.
Oh, most definitely, yeah.
Because he's just taking the shots that he's comfortable with. I mean, he's a rookie right now. Eventually, he's going to be taking more shots. I mean, now he's not a rookie anymore because the season's over. I just feel like it was really cool that you could say like you had a better 3-point shooting percentage than Steph Curry, the greatest 3-point shooter of all time.
Right, because when it comes to, getting a high percentage, definitely how much you shoot is a factor. But half of the battle is getting the ball in. I think the other half is getting in the right place. So if he can, if his numbers is still higher, that means he was getting himself into the right place more often, at least per capita of their stats. But yeah, that's definitely a huge accomplishment, especially just being a rookie. And though he was regarded pretty, people were feeling him some the draft, I don't think anyone was necessarily expecting, especially the postseason that he had. I thought he showed off some really good tools, some good scoring versatility, but yeah, I'm happy with what he did, and I'm excited. I'm excited to see where he can go and what he'll do with his career.
I'm excited where this league is headed because I'm going to be honest, a lot the rookies I feel like in the last class and the rookies in this class. So now there is a lot of risk in this class, but I feel like if they pan out, a lot of these players, the NBA is going to be full of talent, and it already is.
I already feel like the future's here. You have Cat, Porzingis, Devin. Those are all three of those guys were in the same draft just 3 years ago, and they are so hyped up too. And I'd say about these rookies this year, especially marketing, is you can tell that they really want it. I remember watching a Bulls game where Lowry was blocked, and as soon as it was the next possession, he looked like he was an actual live bull. He was going crazy on both sides of the floor, and it just made me so happy watching it, because it's that's our future. And then it's same for Jason Tatum, Ben Simmons, and Donovan. That's also their team's future too.
Well, Donovan Mitchell just has so much drive too. That's what was crazy. Remember after that one Rockets game, I can't say what he said, but he was very upset about some of the calls in the game, but it shows that he really wants it. And that's what I like to see, because you're right, we are witnessing the future of the NBA, this next wave of players, because for a while, there were a lot of players that really didn't look like they're going to be the franchise players in the past drafts, and in these upcoming drafts, there are a lot of players that could potentially be that.
Right, and yeah, exactly what you said, this draft that just happened, there is a lot of risk, especially, with medical concerns with Michael Porter and just, other things for every player, Doncic's speed and, whatever it is. There is definitely some really high ceilings, though. And to see that pan out and how it'll spread around the league, I think it'll be really good, especially since right now the problem is just there's two teams that are just completely better in their conference and that they're just going to get there 4 times. So I don't know. I'm excited, and I think this is maybe not necessarily the best basketball happening ever. I don't, that's a different conversation. Yeah. But I think we are definitely can get to a place where, the league is regarded as one of the most electrifying and entertaining sports that's out there, and I've never stopped believing that.
And I don't really think people realize. Well, people will probably realize after I say it, but they didn't realize now is. Rookie of the Year has never been that serious in the past. I remember when 3 years ago it was Cat and Porzingis and Cat got it, and you can argue for who should have deserved it that season, but no one really talked about it that much. This was the first year it was ever talked about it was in the actual MVP award. It just shows how great these young players are going to be.
Yeah, because it's so close and they're so good that people they're that interested. But what I was really upset about, actually? The Defensive Player of the Year award. Because it seemed like I don't really know where they're gauging their ruling from. You know what I mean? I don't know where their voting was being gauged from. Because for me, if you just look at it numbers-wise, it's Anthony Davis all day. I don't even it's not even close. If you guys want me to go over the numbers between Rudy Gobert and Anthony Davis, I can.
Do.
I just feel basically all I should know is that AD was better in every statistical category, right?
I feel like it's important though to know how big of a margin some of these categories are in.
Let's call those out.
And if you look at Rudy Gobert, I'm gonna go Rudy Gobert and then Anthony Davis. I'm gonna say the category I'm talking about. So for steals, Gobert 0.8 a game. Anthony Davis, 1.5.
So that's for AD.
Now, blocks, 2.3. Anthony Davis, 2.6. So
that's 2 for AD.
It's a little bit closer. But also if you look at defensive rebounds, it goes 7.8, and then it goes 8.6 for Anthony Davis.
That's 3 for AD.
Defensive win shares, it goes 3.9 for Rudy Gobert, and it goes 4.9 for Anthony Davis.
Woo.
Now, defensive box plus or minus goes to Rudy Gobert. It's a lot. It's by a really big margin, and even between Anthony Davis and Joel Embiid, it's 4.6 in comparison to Anthony Davis's 2.3 and Joel Embiid's 2.5. But part of me feels like, I mean, that's 4 categories that Anthony Davis was just above the winner, and 3 that he was above the runner-up out of the 5 that I just looked at. I mean,
Wow.
Joel Embiid had the most defensive rebounds out of all of them, 8.7, but it just seems a little like, where are you guys coming from this? I don't get it, because I know I think Rudy Gobert had the best defensive team out of the 3 of them, or was it the Sixers that had the best defensive team out of the 3 of them?
It was the Sixers.
The Sixers?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, the thing is, I don't really feel like Gobert should have won it either, but I feel like narrative-wise, of course, when he came back, because I think the Jazz were the 10th seed, and when he came back, they became a very good defensive team. Became the highest in the league for a few weeks, and I feel like that's the reason why they gave it to him, because they succeeded so much with him. But that being said, AD we're not really talking about team, we're talking about individual performance, and I feel like AD definitely had the best individual performance out of the 3 of them.
Absolutely. I mean, I think without a doubt, he dominated defensively, any area of the court. Like, there was some especially in I know it's not an account, but in the postseason, Rudy Gobert was struggling with his perimeter defending, and that was really exposed by the Rockets.
And also one thing to look at is I mean, this doesn't count again, but the postseason, I know Anthony Davis had some problems guarding Kevin Durant, but how many problems do you think Rudy Gobert would have had guarding Kevin Durant?
Right.
Yeah, he couldn't even guard Steph. Steph made him spin twice. You guys remember that video?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking
Yeah.
about. I feel like if you're going to put the team into it, that's not really fair for most players. Now, some players can force their teammates to play better defense, and I understand that. But also, I feel like that's more of on the coach than on the player. So that shouldn't be put into account for a Defensive Player of the Year award. I understand how that could be put into account for that concept for the most valuable player. I understand that concept, how that adds into the argument. But for defense, that's something that's all on the person. Defense has always been known as a thing of it's a want.
Right.
You have to want to play defense. And a lot of times you can't force people to want to do anything. You can't force people to do anything. So I feel like if that's an argument that put Anthony Davis below the 2 of them, not just below Rudy Gobert, below Joel Embiid too, I think that's not fair. I feel like Anthony Davis got snubbed in this category. I'm okay with basically every single award that we've talked about so far, but this one, it seems a little sketchy to me. I don't particularly agree.
Yeah, honestly, I was surprised when they gave it to Gobert. I know they announced how many votes every player gets before the award show even happens. I just didn't pay attention to Defensive Player of the Year, because I was like, yeah, they're gonna give it to AD. And honestly, I thought Gobert was more 3rd than 2nd. Well, not in my opinion, but I just thought that's what everyone thought, at the time. And it's crazy because Rudy Gobert just didn't have a good impact on defense, but he did on offense. And I'm not saying that that helped him win the award, but actually I kind of am saying that, because although it's the completely different side of the floor of basketball, their team just got so much better because of not how he helped offensively, but how he helped defensively, but offensively. He was a really good, and you might be like, he's not a good offensive player at all. Well, on ball, of course, but off ball, he's really good at setting screens and getting people in the right place, and it really helped that team
elevate,
and that's why they didn't just get better because of defense. They got better because of his off ball offense, and it helped that win the team. So that's how I'm kind of saying his offense kind of helped him win the award, because the narrative was they got better because of his defense, and it wasn't just because of his defense, it was because of his offense, if that makes sense to you guys.
I see what you're saying, but I feel like, and I can see where that can sway voters in a sense, but I just feel like at the end of the day, it has to be all due to defense.
Right.
Every single part
Absolutely.
of it has to be due to defense. Because
Well, I'm not saying like that's how it should be or shouldn't be. That's just how,
I'm not saying you are. I'm just saying that this is why I'm upset about it.
Oh,
because
right,
if you look
right.
at a player like Ben Wallace, I think he was a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year award. Ben Wallace was never a good offensive player, ever. But did that stop him from winning awards? No.
Right.
So why AD's good on both sides of the court.
Right, and that's actually my point. If we're gonna argue who's the better two-way player, I feel like by far,
Oh, definitely.
AD's got Rudy Gobert on lock.
I just the reason why I bring that point up is just because no one knew that Gobert was going to be actually that good on the offensive side off ball. That's why I bring that up.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
It just really upsets me that Anthony Davis got, in my opinion, snubbed in this
Not
category.
even runner-up.
It should not even runner up. That is ridiculous. I don't understand. But you know what isn't ridiculous? That Lou Williams won Sixth Man of the Year.
My boy.
Yeah, he definitely deserved that. He had that 50-point game with the Clippers.
Yep.
He's definitely on the Clippers.
Yeah, which was awesome. I think he actually started like 19 games, but there's
He did
probably
start 19,
there's
yeah.
probably a
19 games.
minimum of games you can start for Sixth Man of the Year, and that's he probably actually meant it obviously.
Mhm.
But he was amazing on the Clippers. I'd say he was the best player even off the bench.
Oh, for sure. On the
Yeah.
Clippers team?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he was almost an all-star. He worked his way up this season. It's really impressive what he did. I mean,
I
he
forgot
played,
who they gave it to over him, but he absolutely deserved it.
what do you mean gave it to
Because-
over him?
Because there was some player got injured, and they were gonna say Lou Williams should be an all-star, but they didn't give it to him.
Oh, Jimmy Butler.
Right. Yeah.
Jimmy Butler was injured, and he wasn't injured. He wasn't injured. He sat out, and then he got injured. Remember, So
Yeah.
he sat out because he just wanted to get the rest, but he wanted to be on the All-Star team, so he just went there to chill. But so I mean, I think you do get paid for being at the All-Star game too. That's probably why he wanted to be there. But
Said
one thing
get
that
buckets.
I found very interesting about Lou Williams is that he was a sixth man on his team, but he played over 500 minutes more than any other Clipper on that team.
Wow.
That's including the starters. So he is a sixth man, but he's definitely playing starter minutes, which goes the same for Eric Gordon.
Him coming off the bench.
Right, and that was his runner-up.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it absolutely helped the team too. Because he would obviously play bench players. He played starters all the time, but the other players that he played, who were bench players with him, definitely helped him score more, and it helped the team a lot more.
He was just a really good player, and I hope that maybe he gets the chance to start eventually, because I mean, I know his role he is getting a little bit older. I mean, he's 31, but that it looks like his game is going to age very well, in my opinion, and I hope that he does get the chance to shine a little bit more in the situation. Like, I would like to see him in a starting lineup, but if that's where he wants to play, I understand. Like, if that's what you want to do, then that's what you want to do.
Right.
But he really helps his team, even though he's coming out of the sixth. He's coming out of he's their sixth man coming off the bench. I mean, he averages like 5 assists a game. He does everything for that Clippers team that they need him to do. So I think he's a very interesting player. I also think Eric Gordon is a very interesting player, though. I mean, a lot of people I could see if they made an argument for Eric Gordon, I could see where they're coming from. Well, yeah, but I can see where they're coming from, can't you?
Yeah, of course. He was a huge asset on that team.
Even
he
just
could
the
score
hustle
from-
he had in
yeah.
the Western Conference Finals. I know it's not counted, but my gosh, he was giving it all.
He could literally score anywhere. He would set a screen, and he'd get 2 defenders attached to the guy. He'd be 5 feet out from the 3-point line, and he'd still make it. And he was a perfect fit for that Rockets team, and he definitely elevated them just because he was on there.
Well, he really stepped up when Chris Paul went down.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
they
Big
didn't
time.
They didn't win, but he
He
did
gave
do
him
his
hell.
job, and it is saying a lot because I mean, Chris Paul is one of the greatest players of all time. I mean, the win share leader of all NBA history, and he's not even done yet. So that is saying something. I feel like in its own regard. Fred VanVleet was also up for the award, but I don't think he was ever like.
We don't really have to get into him like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
I just-
He wasn't.
Good for you,
Everyone
buddy.
knows he obviously wasn't as impactful as the other 2 guys that we've been talking about.
But he did play his role, and I just wanted to mention him because, like, he was up for the running. I just feel like between Lou Williams and Eric Gordon, I mean, they're in a category on their own, and I feel like just there, kind of like Spencer Dinwiddie,
Right.
the most improved, the most approved player. So yeah, I mean Lou Williams, I think he should be starting. I do, but if that's what he wants to do, then that's what he wants to do. He's a very efficient player, and I'm happy for him. I'm happy he did everything he needed to do for his team. And I think that's it, unless you guys want to talk about something else.
No, yeah.
The NBA award show was just awful. It was terrible. Look, they had I forgot who had a performance there, but they had like a whole live performance. I'm like,
Victor Oladipo had a performance there.
Dude,
catch
he
him
started
singing?
singing, and I'm like, bro, I'm just trying to see who wins the award, dude. Like, I had to sit through an hour just to see who won MVP, and I was like, why am I watching this? I already know
Drake's
who's gonna
not
win.
hosting. We gotta do something.
Yeah.
Something, bro.
I feel like the only good part of the show that wasn't like the awards was, of course, the inside the NBA guys. Like, they were fine, but besides that, I thought it was really hard to watch. They really need to do something about that, and I hate how they put it at the end of the playoffs. Like, all the awards happen, everything's calculated before. After the regular season ends, and we have to wait for the whole playoffs for a regular season award. That's really aggravating for me.
I can also see why they do it. So they have
me
a lot
too.
of time to think about it, but it does get kind of annoying because like then we can say, well, if you look at the postseason, but like we shouldn't even be able to have that thought in our minds. It's like it should be, if it was possible, it should be as soon as it possibly can be, like right after the regular season. It shouldn't be, I feel like, after the postseason, because then we have this image of what the players did in the postseason, and that isn't fair, I guess, to like us
To
and
us
to
at
everybody
all.
else who's watching the awards, because you can't unsee things.
Yeah. The reason why they do that is because if they put it before the playoffs, then everyone's going to be like, well, what's the point of the playoffs, The NBA awards already happened, so...
I don't think that at all. I
Not
don't think
necessarily, I feel like people will find less interest in it because, they literally announced the MVP after the playoffs, and that I feel like that's a big deal. And and everyone always using their arguments what happens in the playoffs. Even though it doesn't count, everyone still uses them, and they wouldn't be able to use that if they put the award show before the playoffs.
I think it's just a logistics thing.
I feel like...
I don't see where they would actually do it between the regular season and the postseason. Like,
didn't Derrick Rose get the MVP award before a game, right, in the playoffs?
Yeah, and Steph did that too.
Yeah, so they've done it before.
It was nice.
yeah,
like
and
that.
I think logistically it doesn't.
No, but that's what I'm saying. It was. I thought it was good before. I didn't see there's anything wrong with it, because when the MVPs, when they win it in the middle of the playoffs, it puts pressure on them and it makes the playoffs more fun.
Okay, that's a good point.
Yeah.
I just I see what you're saying too. But for me, I feel like personally they do it because after the season, they just need people to keep the fans interested, and so to spread it out as much as possible throughout the off season is a good way to keep people paying attention to the NBA. So that's why I feel like they probably do it after the season, just because like you need things to do when there is nothing to show people. So that's kind of how I feel about it. But
right. I also think it's really well timed, considering how it's deep into June. It's pretty close to like when free agency really starts. So like, I don't know. That just makes sense to me.
Well, to me, I just feel like everyone was like, all right, the Warriors won. The season went exactly how it went, and now here are the awards. That's how it feels like for me. I don't really feel like when the award show was on, I didn't feel like excited or anything. I felt like I would have been excited before if it was right after the regular season, because it just ended, and now you can see who wins the awards for right after the season ends, and you don't have to wait for like a month.
I could see what you're saying, because like I feel like I did lose the anticipation of wanting to know after the NBA season like officially ended, counting the postseason, because like I didn't really care as much about who won the MVP as much as I did as right after the season ended. You know what I mean? Like, right after the regular season ended, I really wanted to know. But then as the season went on, then I saw who won, Golden State, and then I kind of just felt like, okay, now we're in draft mode.
Right.
that's us though. That's not every fan.
Right, it's not gonna be everybody.
No,
That's
I
not
feel
every
like
fan.
I mean, a lot of people might just be
a
worried
lot
about
of-
only LeBron watch.
I
So,
could
like,
tell you
there
this.
go.
Yeah.
I don't really have any stats on this. I just feel like I know this because I'm on Twitter a lot. Not a lot of people like the awards at all. There's a lot of people who were like, "This is terrible." So I just feel like they should do something better to fix it because I didn't feel entertained at all or like super into it. Like
I mean,
feel like I
but
should've.
also to just I mean, this is probably the last thing we're gonna say before we end this episode. But also to put it the other way, I mean, there are probably a lot of people that did really enjoy the awards show because there are some people that just like seeing their NBA players, like their favorite players, just acting like people. You know, and you do get that a lot after the like press conferences after the games and everything.
Yeah.
But I mean, just seeing them be there and just have fun with each other and sit down and just like the anticipation of potentially winning something. I feel like a lot of fans just like to see that just in general too. So maybe there are a lot of people that also enjoyed it. But I could see what you're saying. I don't really have a problem with our awards, but yeah, I mean that's basically it from me. I don't really have anything else to say, but so I think I'm just gonna call it on this one. Just thanks for listening. Thanks everyone from we looked around the whole world. There are apparently a lot of you guys from a lot of different places. So thanks if any of you guys tuned in. Thanks. Keep on tuning in, and we're gonna keep on putting out our content. Thanks for listening. I'm Brandon Ruiz,
I'm Zeke Cappel.
And I'm Emilio.
and thanks for listening.